As entrepreneurs, we all have a reason why we chose to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to capture those stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. Charles Bonfiglio has been CEO and president of Tint World since September 1st, 2006. He oversees the company's leadership, development, and operations, focusing on growing the franchise network while maintaining budget and growth projections. Charles also manages sales, marketing, and business functions, including print and internet marketing. He transformed a chain of 6 auto accessory centers into an international franchise by standardizing operations. So, Charles, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you being here. And what you do, I have a personal connection to it because I'm a Jeep guy, and a large portion of our budget is things we can do to change our Jeep, whether it's accessories or tints or various things on it. We love customizing our cars. So I'm really excited to talk to you about your company, Tint World, and how you formed it and that sort of thing. So thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you.
Welcome. I'm happy to be here, Andrew. Appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Cool. So I know everyone kind of heard your intro, but can you just really quick flyby so that way we can kind of get into a conversation on some of what you're doing with Tint World, especially like the franchising that you did with it. Just a brief overview.
Sure. So I was a franchisee of an automotive aftermarket repair center for a very long time. I built about 10 franchises of that brand, and in 2001 was the last one I built. And I took a couple of years to think about what I want to do next. And I decided I wanted to open up my own franchise. I wanted to do what I always dreamed of, is open up a brand that did aftermarket accessories. But I really didn't want to start from scratch. I didn't want to figure it all out all over again and take some time. So I found a company in Florida that was called Tint World. They had about 6 locations. They were founded in 1982. The original founder built like these tint shops. They were built on a shoestring budget, but there was a cool name, cool brand. They did a pretty good job, and I felt I could take it to another level. So in 2006, I called them up and said, let's go to lunch. And next thing you know, I bought the company and the rights, and I converted to a franchise, and we started franchising in 2007. And that's really how it got started.
That's amazing. And how many franchise locations do you have now?
We have just about 150 open. We are in 3 countries, predominantly in the US, but we have about 5 or 6 in Canada, with more in development. We have 1 in Saudi Arabia and 1 in Dubai.
Interesting. And so that's really interesting. You're the first person to have a franchise like in the Middle East, so on the podcast. So it's always fun. Cool. So how did you get started with this? Like what chain of events, besides just going to Tint World and buying it, what chain of events got you into business and got you even interested in tint, car tints and accessories?
It didn't start with wanting to be interested in tint. It started as a teenager. I really loved cars. My first car was a Chevy Malibu Classic, a Chevelle, and I started to customize it, put a car stereo system in it, custom wheels, and I got noticed how good I was actually building these custom cars. Went on to get a brand new turbo Trans Am. And that was, I think, 1981 turbo Trans Am. Had that for about 2 years, and then I wound up getting a Corvette. Now, the Corvette was a used one. I actually bought it. It was an 1981 Corvette in probably around 1982. And at that point, I built each one of these cars to where it got noticed, and I started helping friends build their cars. And lo and behold, they started saying, you should do something with this. You should, maybe open a business. And I really didn't think about it like that. It was a hobby. But, out of high school, I actually went into business. I went to the clothing business. My parents were in that, so I learned that business and I did that. And then I wound up going partners with my brother-in-law in a pizzeria in New York City. I'm right around the corner from the Empire State Building. It was a really good pizzeria, but I learned some hard lessons. I didn't really negotiate the lease right, and I didn't have the option to renew it. And so I wound up not being able to keep that. And I realized I got to learn how to really focus on my future. And so after that, I decided I wanted to build a business that I really loved. And I figured I'd do it around cars. Everybody was telling me I should. So I told my parents, I want to move down to Florida. I was 21 years old. I sold my car. I put the money in the bank. I think I moved down with about $30,000 and a one-way plane ticket to Florida with 2 suitcases. And that's how I started. I moved down and got myself up in a 1-bedroom apartment. And then I started to branch out and look for locations. And the landlords, I was young, they didn't want to lease to me. They didn't think the business model was something that they wanted. They wanted, recognizable brands. And the banks, when I went to go for loans for business, even though I had some money, you still needed more to get the business rolling, but they they don't have any loans for that. So that's how it started. And then I found franchising, and I realized that they can actually help me grow. They actually help me get a loan, help you get the location. They give you a blueprint, a model, training, support. And I started with my first franchise, which was a Meineke discount muffler shop. That's how it started. From there, it went to one and then another and then another. And finally, I said, you know what? I really, instead of renting these things, I would love to own the property. I want to learn how to build my own building, and I want to lease it to the franchise. So eventually this building would be paid off and I'd be able to sell my business one day and collect rent forever. So I started to do that and build bigger brands, bigger franchises for my Meinekes. And the last one I built, and each one was bigger than the next. And the last one was the largest franchise that Meineke had ever had. It was an 18-bay shop with 10,000 square feet. It was the first store that ever did over $2 million. And that opened up in 2001. And so that big investment took me a little time. By the time I got to a couple of years later, I didn't really do any further investments. And then I decided I want to build the business that I always dreamed of. And that's how it started.
That's really interesting. So there's a lot of different, you've had your hands in a few different things, and I love that. And I love what you said about franchises, because I think it's something that I've kind of known about in the background, but I don't think a lot of us think about it. It's some of us have mentors that help us to go forward in our businesses, and we build them from scratch, or I can come in and take an established business and then build it out my own. I'm still the business owner, but it has a framework around it. Talk a little bit more about like your experiences with franchises and how that might have helped you, especially based on your experiences with the pizzeria and various other companies. How did that help you? Like, what specifically how did that help you to move forward faster, I should say?
So because I was getting such pushback on being able to get a lease, for the banks to be able to loan to me,
Yeah.
even though it was a brand I wanted to build, I wanted to build an accessory shop, a car stereo shop, but like I just couldn't get anybody to believe in what I was trying to build. It was a very niche business. Nobody thought about it as a real business. And I spoke to a cousin of mine that was in New Jersey after I came down, and he said to me, "What are you doing in Florida?" And I kind of told him, "I'm trying to get it going. I'm having a tough time." I said, "What are you doing up there?" He said, "Well, about a year ago, I opened up this Meineke discount muffler shop, and I'm doing really well. Him and his brother opened one, and they're about to open the second one." I said, "Why that?" And he said, "Well, they really helped me. They helped me get a loan. They helped me get the property. They gave us a blueprint. They trained us. So when we got in, we actually were able to start making money pretty quickly because they had a proven model." And so that's really where I said, that's not really the business that I wanted. But I looked in franchising, and there was nothing else like what I wanted to build. So I had a reference. I used that as leverage, and I called up Meineke. I applied for, there's the first yes I got. "You're approved for a Meineke." I'm like, wow, what's next? I went back to the same landlord that wouldn't rent to me for the custom car shop, for the car stereo shop. And I said, I just purchased this Meineke franchise. "Oh, Meineke, we love that brand. Here's a lease." Well, I said, "You wouldn't do for me for the other brand." No. We like brands. That's how when we buy property, we go to the bank and they want us to have brands in there that are successful. So it helps us get the lease, the property value to rent to you. If we rent to some oddball that's a new startup, that we don't get the loans that easily. So I really learned a lot back then. But what I learned from franchising, they taught me how to do leases, make sure they're protected. They got me the loans. They taught me how business, and it let me really find my way to grow a business quicker with their blueprint. And then you get all these franchisees that you get to meet on an annual basis at the conventions that you go to, and you start, comparing yourself to them. So you learn off your franchise. Look at this guy, he owns 4, and he just bought a prop, and he's building his own building. It inspired me to want to do the same, and that's kind of how I grew.
I love it. And so basically you're leveraging the franchise in order to be able to open doors that weren't going to be opened with, or would have taken significantly longer. And I love it. And that's what I loved about, when I first heard about franchise and how that works. I love that you can leverage their brands, you can leverage their resources to be able to boost yourself. So that's really cool. Awesome. So then you went on to go buy Tint World, and you've now, remind me, was Tint World a franchise before you purchased them, or were they a franchise when you purchased them and then you built them out from there?
No. So when I moved down to Florida, I didn't know nothing about Tint World. Actually, the original guy that started it, his name was Bobby. He opened the first store in Tamarack, Florida, which is right outside of, Fort Lauderdale. And he built the first one. And I heard his story, and after I moved down a couple of years later, when I went to get my car tinted, I went to Tint World, and this is a pretty cool place.
Uh-huh.
And he actually started to open up a few more. And what happened was it was really built on a shoestring. It was small, maybe 15, 1,800 square feet. They mainly did tint and maybe some detailing. And I thought it was cool, and it was a really stylish brand. It seemed like it was the best one of its kind. So I went there over the years to get tint, and I never really thought about any part of doing anything with it. But years later, when I decided to open up a franchise, I'm like, instead of starting from scratch, let me see if I can go meet with this person and see if I can buy him. At that time, he had 6 locations, and I took him out to lunch. I said, "What are you interested in selling your brand, your business?" And he goes, "You know what? They're kind of run down. They need to be modified. And I've used the money that I made over the years to buy real estate and other things, and I'd be interested." So we wound up working out a deal, and I bought the company or the rights to the brand. And within a year, I started franchising, and then I awarded three new franchise licenses along with the 6 that were there. We had a ceremonial. Once I got approved for franchising through all 50 states, we had a meeting. All the franchisees, the 6 stores, as well as the 3 new ones, had a big signing session. We have all pictures of this stuff. It was great. And that was how we kicked off franchising. And from there, it was like just improving the system, and everything I learned from what I did in my Meineke franchise. I was very involved with them. I was involved with the Franchise Advisory Council, their point of sale software, their vendor management team, their marketing crew. So I was really involved with them. So I learned franchising from both the franchisee multi-unit growth as well as the franchisor, what they did for franchisees. And that's really where I felt I could do this. And I even felt I could do it better.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, that you've had both sides of the franchise. And so, it's easier for people to hear about being a franchisee and going into doing it, but then creating a franchise from, 8, 9 stores, you said at first, the 6 plus the 3 new ones, then now building that to 150 stores in 3 different countries. That what did you learn about the franchise model? And what I want to see is like how somebody who might be thinking, hey, I can, franchising seems cool. I kind of want to, start this franchise. What are some of the best ways to start that? Like where would they even start to get information to be able to be a franchisor?
Well, years ago, it didn't have as much as it is today as what's called franchise broker networks. So there's a bunch of groups that actually start up where they have a bunch of franchise brokers that really learn about the franchises that they represent. So you can go to them and they can talk about what your investment level is, where you're looking to grow it, how many you're looking to grow, what's your expectations. So with that, what type of business do you like? With that, they show you different franchises that meet your criteria, and they help you buy them. Good thing about them, it's like a real estate agent. They get paid based on the sale from the franchisor. So it doesn't really cost the franchisee, the prospect looking for a franchise to get it. But that's more common in the last 5 or 8 years. Really, that grew a lot. Prior to that, you would just really look around. You can go on to the International Franchise Association and look at all the brands that are part of that. And then, look in the sections of the brands that you like and go to their website and learn a little bit about it. Download like a little brochure and, learn about it. And if you see something that you like, you can go it alone. Some people like to do it alone and some people like to get a consultant. But either way, you can learn about them. But it's always nice to have somebody that somehow, somewhere that they opened up on and they were successful, because you can hear their story and you can align with it a little bit more so than just someone that you don't really know.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that, it's basically a built-in mentor because you've got all the systems down. And I think as entrepreneurs, that's one of the issues we run into is that we often have mentors that come in, or we need that additional, support to be able to go. And this is sort of baked into it. We don't have to find one. We know one, and we know one that's been successful in our industry, in the exact brand that we're working in. I think that's a huge benefit for it. So now from a franchisor standpoint, let's say that you've got a couple of stores on something and you want to start a franchise. I know you mentioned a franchise advisory council and a couple of things. What are some of the best practices you've had with starting your own franchise or taking a company and building it out beyond that? Like what are some of the things you've seen that have worked well? What are some of the things it's like, well, that didn't really work well? What have
Well,
you
I
seen?
got to tell you, if you're going to start a franchise, you just have the different mindset that you're owning your own business. So if
Yeah.
you're owning your own business independently, let's say, you're all about how do I make money? How do I make it better? And, there's two types of entrepreneurs, I believe. There's the ones that just want to go into business and make money. And there's ones that just want to be creative. I want it to be me, my ideas, my systems, my program, which costs a lot of time and money to figure it out because a lot more failures on trying to start something new than it is to try to get something that's already proven for success, learn from it and grow with it. And I was one of those guys. I didn't plan on being a franchisee. I just saw that, wow, I was getting no without it and yes with it. And I could move the needle quicker. I even went to my dad. I said, Dad, they approved me, but I don't know if I want to do this. And he told me, he goes, why? I said, because it's not really the exact business I wanted. I wanted to do something different. They don't have any franchises for that. So I said, he goes to me, Charles, he goes, yeah, but it is in the automotive industry. He goes, if you can buy this and open it and operate it, over time, you're going to learn a lot about business. And in the future, if you ever want to build your own thing, you can learn and you'll have the knowledge, the money, the wherewithal to do it. That really made sense to me. And I just felt, let me go and do this. So, but somebody who wants to become a franchisor, when you're owning your own business, whether you're the franchisee, it's all about how much do I make and how much do I leverage and how much do I pay and build my team. But when you're a franchisor, it's how much they make, how much they leverage, how well they grow. You're secondary because you will grow if they grow. But if it's about you and how do I make money off them, that's not the way to think about it. There is a fee in charge that you will get, a royalty fee, which is 6%. It's not like the percentage you'll get by running a business yourself, but it can scale because you have to have consultants out there in the field helping them. You have internal people. But because I had so much knowledge of running my own franchise and I was so intuitively knowledgeable about how there's so many different, I studied like, what are the ones that make the top 20% so great? What are the ones that make the bottom 10% like not really do well? And the ones in the middle stay kind of okay, but in the middle. Well, they're different types of people. The ones in the top get really involved. They want to get involved. They want to be positive. They want to grow. They want to expand. The ones in the middle are happy with, maybe one or two and just want to keep themselves and run their business. They're happy. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great. And the ones at the bottom usually like to complain or they don't have the capabilities or the wherewithal to be able to just focus on it. There's a variety in every industry of, winners and losers. I don't really want to call them a loser, but they really can't do it. And no matter how much you inspire them, they just want to go look to point blame on somebody. So buying a franchise doesn't mean the franchise is going to make you successful. They're going to give you a blueprint, a system, a program that is successful and you can be successful. But if you think that they're going to come down and run your business for you, that's not going to be. But the biggest thing I found is because I was a franchisee first, I was one of them. I knew looking at the franchisor, I was one of the ones at the top. And I hung around with the people at the top and the middle. But I stayed away from the naysayers, the negatives. I just don't have any negative in my life. I don't like it. I focus on growth and I surround myself with positive people that inspire me. And if you're going to be a franchisor, that's what your job is. Your job is to be a visionary leader, to tell them where your vision is, what you're building, how you can help them. It's never about how much I can make from you. It's really how much I can grow you. In the end, the scorecard that is your income that you'll make. If you do a good job, it'll grow. And that's why I say for when I went into franchising, not only had the wherewithal of a franchisee, but I also had more than enough money that I needed to live my life. So when I went into franchise, I didn't really care about the money. I was more caring about how do I grow these franchisees? How do I invest anything into the system that I can to make it better and make it my own? But it's all based on making them successful. And if you go in underfunded to grow a franchise and you have to worry about making money off of them, or you have one or two of the stores that you're trying to make money and you're distracted, that's not going to make you a great franchisor. You have to be focused on growing your franchisees. That's most important.
And that's why, that's why I wanted to go into that franchisor side of things. Is some of the entrepreneurs that I know, it's like, we made my money. I made my money. Now they go out and help other people. And I think with being a franchisor is something where you can, like you said, entrepreneurs, a lot of us just love to create. That's what we do. We create. And with this model that you have, it's already been defined. We already kind of know how franchises work. We know how the fees work. We know how things are. but we can go out and do a lot of good and help a lot of other people get to where we're at. And I think that's really just something that a lot of that is really important. And I think it's something that entrepreneurs are very good at is after we've made our money and after we've done our thing and exited, we can go out and do it and get a residual income based on it as well, based on the performance of those as well. So I think it's a really interesting strategy. And yeah, so thank you for talking about that. I appreciate it. I wanted to hear a little bit more about how that worked, and have people kind of get a better idea for it. So you also, just to pivot here, because every person that I know also does real estate projects. You do real estate projects on the side as well. So I love the fact you're creating this franchise and you're now creating other things, because again, that's what we do as entrepreneurs. Tell us a little bit about these projects, because they're in New York and South Florida, which are two really hot markets. So I kind of always love to hear about the hot markets. Yeah.
So real estate is absolutely a must when you start growing business, especially if it's retail type business. But and also when you start making a lot of money, you're going to see that part of your biggest tax advantage is to basically own property. Because the property, the way it works, and I won't go into detail, but basically when you buy property, it's an investment that is a long-term write-off for any income that you have. So if you just keep leasing places and you're making a lot of money and they're all leased, like you're just paying taxes on all the money you income. But if you're investing that money or a portion of it into real estate, that gives you a longer term tax advantage in most states. I would say you talk to your tax attorney on that, but just generally speaking, it's part of your portfolio because you want to own that. And again, one day you want to sell your businesses, and what better to sell the businesses that you've created, and then you become the landlord and collect rent. So I knew early on when I sold a bunch of my stores that were leased, like you sell it, you get good money and you put it in the bank, and somehow after paying taxes, it starts to dwindle. But when I sold the ones that I had owned the property on, I got bigger money for it because it was a nicer building and I was able to leave long leases. But not only did I sell the business and collect, money from the sale, but it's like an annuity. You just keep getting rental income because I wait till I paid off the properties, and then when they're paying you rent, you're just getting all that income. And that really helps you in later on in life. And that's what really helped me sustain when I was building the Tint franchise. I had income coming from rent. I had still a couple of my franchises still operating. And then after a few years, when I felt it was like, I'm growing now, I really have to focus all on this, I sold my businesses, but I collected rent for a lot of years. I still do. So that helped me. And now I'm in the process of building our new Tint franchise headquarters, which you might see in that picture on the wall.
Oh yeah,
that's what we're building. We're just breaking ground this next couple of weeks. It's only a few miles here in Delray Beach on Federal Highway, right by Car Dealership Alley, a couple of doors away from Tesla. So I think that we'll do really good there, but it's also, I wanted to grow a nice business where on the first floor, I have a franchise location that actually serves the community. And on the second floor, I have all our franchise corporate officers and people that can support our franchise all over. So a training center, retail center, as well as our corporate team.
That's awesome. And I love the fact that on the first floor, you have an actual retail location, because a lot of companies do this where that's their like pilot store. So if they want a new initiative or something else they're trying out, they do it in the pilot store right near, the hub of the action, just to kind of try it out and see what's going on. But I love, and to serve the community as well. I love that, man. And so now, as far as the franchise is concerned, because I know a lot of people will have heard, if you've ever watched, anything about Ray Kroc, that, McDonald's is not a food company. They're a real estate company that happens to sell food. And so is that the same thing that you do with your franchises as well? Do you lease to do you hold leases on the properties as far as the real estate is concerned and use that as an asset for the company to leverage it? Or how do you work that in your companies?
Well, I haven't done that as of yet. I really help franchisees either find the property if they want own property to build it and have a business, or I help them find a lease in a location that's suitable for our franchise that they can, rebuild to make it, look like our brand. So most of them are that. I would say 90% of them are, lease locations that were remodeled for our brand. And then there are some now, and as the franchise grows, now we're getting to, like, we have 150 open, another 100 in development right now. So we're opening up, like, I think we opened up 7 last quarter. We're destined to open about 10 in the next quarter. But they're all under construction, being built out and being ready to launch. So as we're growing and our brand is coming very popular and it's predictable, we're getting higher level people to come in that have a lot more money and they want to do a multi-unit growth. And with that, some of them, they want to own the property in, and that's a smart move. I wouldn't say maybe your first one you should. I think you should get into it, easy, quick, operate. And if you start to get to like it and you have the wherewithal and financial ability, then you can go open it. And I love helping people go to that next step. Ready to buy a building, ready to buy a property and build a building. I love to help them with that because I learned along the way from people around me. I didn't just, wake up one day and say, oh, I know how to build property. I literally learned from a customer of mine. Customer of mine was a finance guy. He was building all these skyscrapers in Miami, and he just came to me with a real problem. He just got out of college, real smart finance guy, but he didn't have a lot of money. And I helped him out with his car. And from that point, I became friendly with him. And then he said, how come you don't own your own property? I said, Howard. His name was Howard. I said, Howard, I don't know how to do that. I want to do that. I'm trying. And he goes, I'll help you. And because I helped him, he helped me. And then he helped me find the property, helped me get financing. He helped me show me how to position my financials so it would be easy to get the loans for that kind of property. And then when I found the property and we bought it, he helped me with a friend of his that he went to college with that was building, construction guy. So he brought me to him and said, you got to help my friend, meaning me. And so the guy basically said, I'm going to help you build your property. And while I got my GC license, he showed me how to do everything and helped me build my first building. As soon as I was done and I opened it, that was the first Meineke that ever did over $1 million in the first year. And so I was loving that. And I really took notice that this really statuesque building was great to build with. I couldn't have done it years earlier, but now I was like, I found something new. And from there, a couple of years later, I built 2 more right away. And I started to do it on my own because I didn't need that. I learned. So I've learned a lot of things from people around me. I was very fortunate. If you're good to people, somehow it comes back to you. And not from everyone, but just generally.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that was a big question that people are going to ask about franchises, is about the real estate side of things. So thank you so much for answering that. I appreciate it. So as we get towards the end of things here, there is one question that I ask everyone, and that is, what is a book or a podcast that has really had an impact on your life that you can share with the audience?
The first business book that I read, and, this is before there was any politics involved. Trump wrote a book called,
Art of the Deal?
The Art of the Deal.
Awesome book.
And my father was the one who told me. I was I guess it was the early 90s, I think it was. And I was in Florida and I was trying to build. He goes, Charles, this guy in New York, he's doing all this building. Why don't you read this book? Yeah. And it was the first business book here. And I really thought, wow, I can do this. And as far as getting onto podcasts, I won't say podcast, but another thing I did was I used Tony Robbins tapes. And one of the things I learned from Tony Robbins is that somebody's going to be successful. Why not it be you? If you want to do it and you can conceive it, you can achieve it. And I really thought that was good. Now I see some of my franchisees, they go to all these different events, and sometimes that distracts them because they want to do this, then they want to do that. All I can tell you is that when you decide what you want to do, stay focused on what it is. If you open up a franchise, I've seen them get very, very successful in 1, 2 franchises. And then they go to these, other, Tony events things, and they go to these, Grant Card, those things, which is all great, but they get sidetracked and they don't focus on their business. I always stayed focused on the business that I'm growing, and it's good to learn other things and implement it into your program, but don't get distracted and leave your business. Sales go down, you wind up never being good at anything because you become a jack of all trades rather than a master of what you really are good at and adding to your collection of knowledge.
I call it shiny object syndrome. Or shiny mastermind syndrome, where you just go to as many masterminds as you can. And it's a form of, it's a form of fear-based deferral. So you just don't want to face it. You just go to a bunch of masterminds and you're not actually making a decision to do something, like you said. So I think I've seen that as well. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's something that people need to be aware of, and it sneaks up on you. So awesome. Well, Charles, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate having you.
You're welcome. I was happy to be here, and I hope the story works for everyone. So yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Anytime. Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Charles, check out the link in the description.